Denise Ho is a brilliant cantopop singer.
She was huge in mainland China.
We would always feel like she's the perfect idol. The record companies, they just didn't know what to do with me. And I wasn't ready to conform to what they expected. I was pretty obvious with my songs and everything. I had concerns for people around me, and I started thinking, maybe there's more that I can focus on. She thinks it's more important to do what's right than to worry about her own stardom.
多謝每一位同我哋並肩作戰，再創。
Hello, Sue. Thank you for accepting our interview request. And then this is Toronto TV. We started operation in 2003 and produced 10,000 videos about Toronto Chinese community. Once again, thank you, Sue. Can you introduce yourself to our audience?
Sure. First, Judge, thanks so much for inviting me. It's a pleasure to be with people in Toronto today. I'm a filmmaker based in New York. I've been making films about China since the late 1980s. And so I've spent a great deal of time in the mainland and also in Hong Kong. But one little commonality that Denise and I have is that we're both Canadian. The name of my company is Ambrica, which stands for American, British, Canadian. It's my 3 passports. And I spent formative childhood years in Canada, and so did Denise, and that was always a nice bond between us. And I know she holds Montreal and Toronto and Vancouver close to her heart.
Mm-hmm. And I read about the film you say about Denise, says that Denise invited you to film her. Is that the case?
Yes, well, it started because a mutual friend introduced us and thought that Denise would be a great subject for a film, and she arranged for us to meet. And I actually didn't really know Denise, anything at all about Denise or cantopop. But we spent some time together. I went out to Hong Kong and spent several days. We just talked a lot, and I asked her lots of questions. She showed me around kind of her life in Hong Kong, and we eventually agreed we'd do it. That was in the fall of 2017.
Mm-hmm. I think that's the time it's the Occupy Central. Is that right? Or
no, Occupy Central. Well, that was, are you referring to the umbrella movement in 2014?
Yeah. Oh, okay.
And then, so this was a quiet time, really, for Denise. After the umbrella movement, she had a lot of problems with China, and she was blacklisted, and her career
hurt.
Hard time with her career. And in fact, when we started the film, I wanted to answer the question, how does an artist have a career if they're blacklisted by China? Mm-hmm. Because it means not a lot of people won't want to work with you. So that was where we started. It ended up, as I'm sure you know, the film ended up, as I'm sure you know, in a slightly different place because of all the events which happened last year in 2019.
Yeah. So, okay. That means that you start to making this is after the umbrella movement. So I think at the beginning you may just think about the umbrella movement. I didn't realize that we have last year's the big incidents in Hong Kong. Is that right? So why don't you carry on until maybe like this year? You got like last year's big incident, and this year they got a new security law. Will that make your film more impact, more interesting?
Well, there comes a time when you have to say we're out of money, we have to stop filming, and we have to finish the film. The plan was to release the film actually last fall, but because the protests were still continuing and nobody knew quite what was going to happen, we continued to film, almost until last November, and then even a few shots carrying on through December. And But you can't film indefinitely, especially when you have a finite budget. So, but I think it was important, to get the story out to the rest of the world and to try to make a little bit more personal and immediate. What's been going on in Hong Kong, and we could not have foreseen that the national security law would be passed and put into, started to be implemented in July, just a few weeks ago.
Okay, so for film production, like for media, so it's all concerned about limited by budget, by money, right? Otherwise,
also, I didn't intend to make a film that would go on for 4 or 5 years. The story in Hong Kong isn't over yet.
Yeah,
we'd still be filming if our thing was to keep a diary of what's going on month to month in Hong Kong. We'd still be going, right?
Yeah, that's true. So my question is, will there be a second episode? A second film about this carry on about your story?
I'm not planning it at the moment. Honestly, it's a lot of work just finishing up this one and getting it out into the world and introducing Denise to a wider Western audience, and to tell the story of Hong Kong, as I said, to a wider audience as well.
Okay, so you are the ambassador for Denise Tone. So you say the whole film starting from the beginning and finished pushing out is about 2 years, right? So through that 2 years,
it's 2.5.
2.5 years.
2.5,
Okay.
yeah.
I know. Making documentary is a pain, is regarding the time span. So as I say, your film tells about the Denise Ho. So how you see Denise Ho yourself?
I think she's an incredibly courageous woman. She's a really rare example in the world today. I would say the world, not just in Hong Kong or Asia, in the world, of someone who's really standing up for what she believes in, for her principles, for values that so many of us around the world cherish deeply, like freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and the rule of law and basic democratic values. And she credits her strength and her really fierce faith in these values to her teenage years spent in Montreal, where she saw that in Canada people, were encouraged to voice their opinions if they felt strongly about things. They were encouraged to think independently. There's a vibrant discourse in Canada about all sorts of things. And I think that had a very deep impression, made a very deep impression on her. And I think it's why she's one of just a very small handful of celebrities in Hong Kong who have dared to use their fame and dared to risk their careers by speaking up for Hong Kong culture and Hong Kong identity and the values which several generations of Hong Kongers have now grown up with.
I think by the time Denise moved to Hong Kong, she was still very young, right? It's a teenagers, and
18, yeah.
Yeah. So and then she spent basically she built her singing career in Hong Kong, and then So I don't see much like democracy or freedom route in her early days, except when she was arrested in the Occupy Central. So will there be any like fundamentals for her inside democracy thinking or attitude, something like that? Or can you tell us about
Sure.
that?
I mean, I think she goes back to Montreal quite frequently and is in close touch with friends there and comes almost every year for several weeks to see old friends. I would say that her coming out as lesbian in 2012 was also a manifestation of this courage to live and speak your truth. That was also relatively rare, although I think, you could see it in her music and her big hit songs like Lewis and Lawrence, which is the story of two men who are in love and who they have to abandon their love for each other because of society's condemnation. And those are. I was actually talking with a music critic the other day, and I asked him, can you think of any other singer anywhere in the world who sung openly about homosexual, gay, queer love, where the entire audience, where like 20,000 people are singing along with you? And that is what happened in Hong Kong, when Lewis and Lawrence came out, 2010, 2011, 2012. I found it quite remarkable, actually.
Yeah, I think we all believe that LGBT movement is worldwide. All right. Besides her, there's Anthony Wong, also the outstanding spoken gay singers in Hong Kong, right? So probably that identity gives her more media exposure, more outspoken image, right? So that's what we look at from the news, from the media, all right? So when we look at, say, you invite some scholars and then Anthony Wong to talk about Denise. So why those two scholars? So, and what kind of information from those scholars about Denise Ho?
It was very hard for us to find people who would agree to appear on camera, especially in Hong Kong. In the States, less. But we felt we needed a little bit of scholarly input just to contextualize the situation in Hong Kong. A lot of people, they don't know about, or they've forgotten about, or, they never even knew it was a British colony, that there was the joint declaration, that there was one party, two systems. So we needed some voices to just explain that to the audience, and that's really their function.
I think we all believe that so Denise's career or money-making business was hurt by her devotion to democracy, freedom of speech. Did you see, since you have been working with her for a number of years, did you see or feel any regret from her about this sacrifice? Or
it's a complicated one, I think. I don't think she regrets it, but I think it's been very hard. And I think it's been very hurtful, I think, and frustrating. So she's definitely paid a price emotionally. And, she said it hurts when former colleagues won't come and see you or won't let you go and see them perform. They don't want to have anything to do with you in public because they're afraid that it will hurt them. So I think it has come at a big cost. But I don't think she regrets it. I think she's kind of assumed it.
Okay, that's a good thing. And now when I look at the poster, say, Denise Ho becoming the song. So the title a little bit, I'm not so understand why say becoming the song. So can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. Well, her first song, I'm One of Many, that was her first hit song. I know that I'm One of Millions, or There Are Millions Like Us. We chose to translate it in the film as I'm One of Many, but I know in Cantonese it could be translated in different ways. So for Cantonese speakers listening, I'm sorry if it's her first hit song, and it's about she's not the only one who sacrificed. She's not the only one who sacrificed for love. That there are millions like her. And it's a sort of phrase that is used in revolutionary times. And she said to me, I used to think about these things, but then with everything that happened in the umbrella movement, getting arrested and so on, it actually became reality. And so, it became like a TV play. And so that's when I got the idea that, in fact, she became the song that she sings, or the song that she sang back then. And so that was just my idea for tying her musical career and her identity together with that of her sort of more activist life and the story of Hong Kong.
Yeah. I think Denise is the first like outspoken, telling the top public she's a lesbian singer. Just like in UK, Elton John is also a gay singer, and Elton always show his lifestyle with his partner. Did I see Denise's partner in your film, or why there's no mention about her partner?
No, it's interesting that she wants to protect anyone she's romantically involved with.
Okay.
A, from the paparazzi, and B, from everybody else. Mm-hmm. And it's what the paparazzi's like.
Yeah, I know.
They can be very brutal, and she just doesn't. She's open about who she is, but she doesn't want other people to get hurt. It's interesting you say that about Elton John, because Elton John has. Correct me, right, if I'm wrong. I love Elton John. And you do see his lifestyle with his husband and stuff. I've never heard him singing When Lewis and Lawrence Fell in Love. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like an overt lyrics that tell an overtly gay love story. Everything else is, it's always a little gender vague. Mm-hmm. Usually with Elton, with Sam Smith, with other great gay singers.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, so through making this film for Denise, do you think you get something, or what's your impression? Or
I'm sorry, could you say that again? I couldn't quite understand.
I think that you spent a few years with Denise and then make the film for her. All right, through that encounter experience with Denise, do you get something, or do you feel any motivated, impressed by Denise?
You can't say that I made the film for her. I made the film about her, which is different. This is certainly not a film that I made for her. She had no editorial control in it. Mm-hmm. She corrected some errors of fact, and she certainly gave input into the translation of the lyrics. And at the very beginning, I said, what songs of yours are the most important songs to you? Which ones do you think I should really include? And that's it. So this film was not made for her. It was made for a wider audience. And I think from my perspective, obviously I'm a North American filmmaker. I would never presume to make a film for an Asian audience, although I do hope it's shown in Asia. Mm-hmm. It's for everybody, but my first goal was to bring this story to a wider Western audience.
Okay. Yeah, I agree that, Hong Kong becomes a focus of the world, and then many people are interested to see what's going on in Hong Kong. So probably you have a bigger audience. Yeah. Yeah, and I think, what's happening in Hong Kong, I mean, it's been amazing seeing Black Lives Matter and how they started, activists here in the States have started to use terms like be water, which was, of course, P1, and they've copied the taking the traffic cones and putting out tear gas, and they, so they sort of fill these like flashes. Am I looking at Hong Kong, or am I looking at Portland? It's this sort of universal desire, for basic civil freedoms. Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. Because I'm a Torontonian, so that every time anything happen in Hong Kong, we see the news in CBC, CTV, Global. So it's become a international focus. The other thing that I'm still looking at your poster, they got a say every movement needs a voice. I really like this slogan. Yeah. So. Thank you. That was our press team. Okay. That was Pino Lorber who were distributing. I can't take credit for that. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But you mentioned that you're Canadian, right? Is that right? Or you live in America now? I am. I grew up in Canada till I was about 13, and then moved to England, and then eventually the States. But I still have family and friends in Canada, and honestly, at the moment, seeing what's happening here in the States, I often think time for me to go back to my roots. Let's see. Since you mentioned that you have been like working stories on China, Hong Kong, so look at the current situation about the USA, China, Hong Kong, Canada. It's a very, very complicated situation, environment right now. So will there be any plan for you to make something documentary about, I mean, the stories for these 4 areas, 4 countries? So
I don't think so. You know, at the moment, I'm just, I like to sort of clear my head after each film a little bit. And this has been, I feel like this film's not quite over yet, in the sense that it's not quite out into the world enough that I worried very much about what's happening to people in Hong Kong now. Obviously, I worry about Denise. A lot of people worry about Denise. You know, I may have difficulties going to Hong Kong after this film, and certainly not allowed back into China. So I'm just going to sort of sit back for a little bit, try and make sure we get this film out into the world as best we can, and then see where I should best put my energy.
Okay. Yeah, I'm expecting the second picture or follow-up. Okay, my last question is that I know that making a documentary is hard work. So, does the hard work worth?
Oh, it is. You know, it is so hard to make a film. You are so right. Every aspect, you know, the research, the raising the money. In this case, the distance. It's a long way. It took a long way from New York to Hong Kong. The editing, but when it all starts to come together, it's great. For me, there's nothing more rewarding than seeing the story come together and starting to play with the music and the graphics and the animation, and I love all that stuff. So yeah, I guess it's worth it, or else I wouldn't keep doing it, right?
Yeah, I believe it's once a lifetime's experience. Yeah, so I think you do really treasure it. Okay, thank you, Sue. It's nice talking to you, and then hope your film get more worldwide recognition, and then keep up your good works. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, you take care. Bye.
Bye.
Protesters, mostly students, are demanding full democracy.
Every Hong Konger, no matter what they do, they could potentially be sent to China where there's no rule of law.
If we pass that, there's no turning back.
She was really with students on the streets. She didn't act like she was some kind of superstar.
She already knew the consequences.
If you're not welcome in China, nobody would want to touch you.
For the first time in Hong Kong, you see these people fighting for something that they believe in. And I was screaming, "Hey, go!"
We're proud, and that's why we support her here as well.
Because I think she truly represents Hong Kong, and she is a true Hong Konger.